Hello children, in the last topic we discussed respiratory system and respiration processes. You already know about gases exchange taking place in lungs. I am Maunika. So, let us discuss the topic. Types of respiration from the lesson Life Processes of Class 10 Biology. Learning outcomes. After studying this topic, you will be knowing about transportation of gases and gaseous exchange. Cellular or aerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration. Fermentation. Evolution in gases exchanging system. Respiration in plants. Keywords: cellular respiration, mitochondria, adenosine triphosphate or ATP. Anaerobic respiration, fermentation, pyruvate, lenticels. Let us see the concept map here. The air is a mixture of gases. In the lungs, the gaseous exchange takes place between alveoli and blood capillaries. The oxygen binds with hemoglobin of red blood cells, forming oxyhemoglobin and carried to all the cells of the body. At high altitudes, the oxygen levels decrease and requires a supplementary supply of oxygen. Gaseous exchange from capillaries to the cells and back. The cells are continually using oxygen. Hence, the concentration of oxygen in tissues is the only 1/3 of that in the lungs. So, the oxyhemoglobin releases the oxygen molecules in the cells during respiration. Cellular respiration. The term cellular respiration refers to the release of energy in the cells from the chemical bonds of food molecules. In cellular respiration, foods are oxidized in the presence or absence of oxygen. The cellular respiration in the presence of oxygen is called aerobic respiration, and in its absence is called anaerobic respiration and fermentation. Cellular respiration in prokaryotic cells like bacteria occurs within the cytoplasm. In eukaryotic cells, the cytoplasm and mitochondria are the sites of the reactions. The energy is stored in mitochondria as ATP. Therefore, mitochondria are called powerhouses of the cell. Let us observe the following pathways at the cellular level, starting with glucose shown in the flow chart here. In aerobic respiration, glucose is oxidized in 3 steps. Glycolysis. This process occurs in the cytoplasm. Glucose is oxidized in the multi-step process, forming 2 molecules of pyruvic acid, ATP, NADH2 and water. The pyruvic acid molecules formed are further converted into acetyl coenzyme A molecules. Two molecules of NADH2 and 2 molecules of CO2 are released during this process. Tricarboxylic acid cycle. Two molecules of acetyl CoA enters the mitochondria undergoing a cyclic chain of reactions called the tricarboxylic acid cycle. In this process, the acetyl part of acetyl CoA is completely oxidized to CO2, H2O, NADH2 and FADH2. Electron transfer chain reaction. The NADH2 and FADH2 molecules formed during the above processes participate in the electron transfer chain reaction in mitochondria. Due to this, 3 molecules of ATP are obtained from each NADH2 molecules and 2 molecules of ATP from each FADH2 molecule. Besides ATP, water molecules are also formed in this reaction. Thus, a molecule of glucose is completely oxidized in aerobic respiration, producing CO2, H2O and energy. NADH2 is nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. FADH2 is flavin adenine dinucleotide. Both enzymes are formed in the cells and used in cellular respiration. ATP or adenosine triphosphate is an energy-rich molecule and energy is stored in the bonds of phosphate groups. The ATP contains a nitrogenous compound, adenine, pentose, sugar, ribose and 3 phosphate groups. The energy is derived by breaking the phosphate bonds of ATP. Hence, ATP is called the energy currency of the cell. Glucose is the source for deriving energy in plants, animals, and microorganisms. The glucose is oxidized in two stages. First, it is converted into two molecules of pyruvic acid. Later, pyruvic acid is oxidized to CO2 and water releases large amounts of energy. If oxygen is inadequate or absent, pyruvic acid is converted into either ethanol or lactic acid, releasing a small amount of energy. A sprinter can do a considerable amount of muscular work. During a running race, the energy produced by ATP already present in the muscles is converted to ADP. Later, the sugar in the working muscles is changed to lactic acid. The energy stored in lactic acid molecules is less than that in sugar molecules. This energy released could be used to rebuild ATP from ADP and phosphate. In low levels of oxygen or its absence, muscle cells accumulate lactic acid by anaerobic respiration. The athlete is able to remove the lactic acid under an adequate oxygen supply. The inadequate oxygen supply in muscles is called an oxygen debt. The yeast turns sugar into ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide in the absence of oxygen. This can be observed when a baker prepares a dough by mixing the yeast in it. The dough stands for a long time without oxygen and develops a characteristic smell due to the production of ethanol. This process is called fermentation and is a process of producing energy in the absence of oxygen. Respiration versus combustion. Lavoisier in 1783 stated that respiration is a very slow combustion process, and here oxygen not only combines with carbon but also with hydrogen. Robinson also stated that respiration is a type of combustion which is the source of heat in animals. Heat production by living organisms. Living organisms produce energy in the form of heat. Heat is lost from the body surface to maintain the constant body temperature. The excess amount of the energy produced during cellular respiration is released as heat. Vigorous activities like running require more amount of energy. This increases the rate of respiration and the amount of heat released. Evolution in gases exchanging system. Organisms are evolved with different systems for gaseous exchange. Unicellular organisms like amoeba and multicellular organisms like hydra and planarians obtain oxygen and remove carbon dioxide directly from the body by diffusion. The terrestrial and aquatic animals are adapted to different types of respiration. They have different respiratory organs depending on their habitat, body size, availability of water, and the type of circulatory system. We find the tracheal respiratory system in insects like cockroaches, grasshoppers, etc. Some aquatic animals like fish have gills or branchia. This is called branchial respiration, and blood is supplied to gills through capillaries for exchange of gases. Respiration through the skin is called cutaneous respiration. A frog is an amphibian that can respire through cutaneous and pulmonary respiration processes. Terrestrial animals like reptiles, birds, and mammals respire through lungs. Respiration in plants. In plants, the gaseous exchange occurs through the stomata in leaves, the surface of roots, lenticels on stem, etc. Some mangrove plants have specialized structures like breathing roots, and the special tissues in orchids can take up the oxygen to produce energy and release carbon dioxide. The stomata are connected as a network with the spaces between the cells. The oxygen dissolved in the water passed into the cytoplasm through the porous cell walls. The breakdown of sugars in the cytoplasm produces carbon dioxide, water, and energy. The carbon dioxide passes out into the air spaces by diffusion. The utilization of oxygen by the cells develops a gradient between air inside the air spaces and outside the stomata and lenticels. Thus, oxygen passes into cells and carbon dioxide is released due to the development of a gradient in the reverse direction. Aeration of roots. The roots take in the oxygen from the air spaces between the soil particles. This occurs through the lenticels or by the surface of root hairs. But for plants growing in wet places like ponds or marshes, the roots are unable to obtain oxygen. Plants growing in water-lodged conditions contain larger air spaces connecting the stems with the roots. making efficient diffusion of air. These plants have hollow stems. The problem of air transport is more difficult for trees, and few survive with their roots blocked permanently in water. Therefore, mangrove trees of tropics form aerial roots above the soil surface and take in oxygen through these roots. Photosynthesis versus respiration. Photosynthesis and respiration appear to be opposing reactions with different biochemical pathways. Let us observe the difference between photosynthesis and respiration in the table shown. Points to remember. Aerobic respiration occurs in an adequate supply of air producing a lot of energy, carbon dioxide and water. Anaerobic respiration and fermentation occur in inadequate supply or absence of oxygen to produce energy. Cells may resort to the breakdown of 3-carbon compound pyruvate aerobically or anaerobically depending upon the availability of oxygen. Photosynthesis and respiration appear to be opposing reactions, but both have very different biochemical pathways.